Hello, everybody. It's Roby coming at you with Candidates Day 9, and it was one heck of a round, that is for sure. The importance of this round could have huge ramifications for a few players moving forward. But we're going to take a look at probably the two most important wins that took place. And there was 4 wins in total. A couple were just flat-out blunders, so we're not going to bother taking a look at those. But the ones that were really, really important we're going to take a look at. We're going to take a look at the Aronian Mamedov game in detail, and then we'll do a quick overview of the Anand game. And then from there, probably we'll take some time and we'll talk about the point structure and where everybody stands moving forward when they get back to the boards tomorrow. So let's get started here. So we're going to take a look at the Mamedov versus Aronian game. Aronian's playing black. Obviously, he was one of the favorites in the competition. And we get into a Nimzo Indian setup here. No big surprise here for Mamedov. He opened up with the queen's pawn. And from here now, Mamedov's got a couple options. He can play moves like, for example, e3 in this position, quite common. He also likes to use c2 with the queen a lot, but in this game he elected to push his pawn up to f3. And you can see that he's already building up a strong center in this position, so Aronian's going to have to deal with that. But Aronian's got a line that he pretty much, I think, devised and prepared for a game in this competition, because you hardly ever see it. He goes for a really rapid castle in this position. Mamedov grabs his center, and Aronian counterattacks right away, throws out the counter punch, and pushes the pawn to d5, attacking into that center right away. And the early castle is going to help facilitate any kind of central scrimmage, because it can whip out and help support those pieces. But from here now, Mamedov kicks the knight. Knight falls back, and now Mamedov grabs a piece into the center, taking on d5. And from here, Aronian recaptures, and now Mamedov puts the question to the dark square bishop. Are you going to retreat, or are you going to take that knight? Aronian takes the knight, and we end up with a structure like this. And definitely playable from both sides, and you're going to see some very interesting play come up here from Aronian. He pushes the pawn up to f3, immediately attacking again into the center of the board. And there's some pitfalls and there's some traps here for White. White's got to be careful. For example, if White pushes the pawn up to f4, well, what happens is this brutal line right here, and you just drop a piece, so that's not good. If, on the other hand, you capture on the other side, it's pretty much the same thing. You just wind up into some definitely bad possibilities. So instead of doing any of those moves, Mamedov took, and he captured the pawn on f6. Now, I would say probably 9.9 times out of 10 you would see something like in this position a knight recapture on that pawn or a queen recapture on the pawn. You don't see what Aronian plays, which is simply to hit the check here with the queen. Queen blocks, and instead of doing the queen trade, Aronian swings the queen now to f7. So he hasn't even caught that pawn back, and he's got a threat here. Obviously, he's got rook over to e8. However, and this was kind of one of the more interesting parts of the game for me personally, for my own improvement, because I've been working a lot on my positional awareness and finding out what the strongest move, what the best candidate move in the position would be. Since we can already defend with bishop to e3, we don't have to play that first. And I think in a lot of cases, and even in my own chess games, I might deal with this threat before I have to, and thereby kind of negating playing the strongest move in the position. So for example, in one of my games, I might have played an early bishop to e3 right now, or maybe king to f2. So I wanted to point that out, because I know a lot of you guys are improving at your own chess as well. But in this position here, Mamedov didn't have to do anything, because he already can defend, and more importantly, the second move. So after black plays this, the next move after can't really contribute to this threat. So we don't have to worry about it right away. So instead, Mamedov takes a pawn on g7 and says, well, what are you going to do? And here comes the rook, and there goes the bishop. So we get into that position there. So Aronian plays knight up to c6 now. Mamedov plays queen to d2, getting it off of that in front of the king there. And Aronian plays knight to a5. Now we have a threat that we have to deal with right away. This is an immediate threat. So, there's no getting around delaying this one. Otherwise, there could be some problems here. So Mamedov swings a rook over to take care of that fork threat. And from here now, Aronian puts his knight onto b6. And we see a huge, tremendous amount of pressure building up here on the c4 square. Now, Aronian obviously planned this out, and this line that he used is full of pitfalls and traps and immediate threats. So it's actually quite a brilliant line. I don't know exactly how often it's been used. I don't think it's been used very much. So if you're looking for, I don't know if you'd want to try to add this to your repertoire or not. But it's definitely solid and it's definitely good. You definitely have a fighting game with it. So anyway, we've got a lot of pressure building up here. Mamedov to take care of that plays rook up now to b4, attacking that forking square because we've still got the queen in the dark square bishop here, and we still have the rook bearing down onto our white king position. So we can't just let these knights pop in without doing anything about it. Nonetheless, Aronian does bring the knight in, and instead of using the rook in this position, Mamedov takes with the light square bishop. Might as well. That bishop wasn't developed at all. Not really doing anything in the position, so might as well use it, develop it, and kill it off all in one shot. Aronian captures back with the pawn, and from here now, Mamedov brings a rook up now to b5. So the rook's got influence along the fifth rank here. Aronian continues bishop now to f4, eyeballing up the square here on d3 for the bishop, which would be a very, very nice place for that bishop to be. Mamedov moves the king now off that e-file. That e-file pressure, the early e-file pressure from black was amazing in this line. And from here now, Aronian brings the knight in. Once again, we've got a huge threat in the position. It's attacking the bishop, supported by the rook. And there's really no other good move but to sack the exchange here. But white comes out okay after the recapture in terms of material. The material is equal, so white's got a knight and two pawns, and black's got the rook. So it was definitely a good, because any other move really would have completely killed the position for white. So play continues now. White develops knight up to e2. Aronian pushes the pawn up now. So Aronian's going to go for some queenside activity. The king side of black is pretty solid, or sorry, of white is pretty solid, and the pieces are pretty much developed, and this rook can swing over either side of the board. So Aronian figured his best chances would be to attack on the queen side, which is relatively light on the white pieces. From here now, Mamedov says, well, if you're going to attack on the queen side, I'm going to counterattack on the king side, and he pushes his pawn up to h4. And if there's one thing, I guess, in this game that really stands out that a lot of people have been criticizing about Aronian is that he kind of lets this h-pawn run a little wild here. He continues on with the queen side attack, and the h-pawn continues to march up the board. And we got to remember, we still have this annoying white pawn here on g7. Anytime you have a pawn one square away from promotion, the closer you get to the endgame, the better off you are. So Aronian continues on now with the attack. Mamedov captures, Aronian takes, and Mamedov captures back. And from here now, the queen swings over to b5. And Mamedov plays rook over now to e1. And from this position here, there's some, there could be some alternative moves here for Aronian. For example, the computer really likes ganging up on this pawn and just going to town on it and taking it right off the board. However, that wasn't played in the game. What was played was instead the bishop down now to d3 on that really aggressive square, also opening up an attack now on the h5 pawn. But Mamedov's got a really sweet move in this position. He just swings the knight up now to f4, and if we could just go back a move, you'll notice that that's a dark square that he puts that knight onto, so that light square bishop can't contribute to any kind of attack on that knight. So that knight's defending the pawn. It's also attacking that well-placed bishop on d3. So from here, Aronian decides to bring his rook down now to a3. And once again, though, the computer really liked black ganging up on this pawn here to secure that pawn. But nonetheless, rook to a3 was played. And the pawn gets pushed up here by Mamedov, severing the queen's connection to the pawn on h5. And play continues as follows. I'm just going to go a couple moves in here a little bit. White's able to deflect these threats really quickly. And once the material comes off the board, now black's got to worry about this h5 pawn and this g7 pawn. And there's really no big threats to white in this position because the rook and the bishop are, well placed on the queen side, but all the action is going to be over here now, so they're a little bit out of place. Now comes h6. Now we've got even bigger problems. We've got connected pawns now. We've got the pawn supporting the pawn on g7, and this is going to be the Achilles heel of Aronian in this game, as you'll see. He tries to take care of this structure as best as he can. He brings a queen into f7. Now Mamedov places the knight now on h5, and there's some tricks here. If that knight is taken on h5, well, look what happens here. It's just going to be checkmate and game over. So that knight can't be taken. And this knight, let's just call this the pesky knight because it can never be taken. For you'll see here. It's pretty interesting. So what does Aronian do? Well, he brings the bishop back, and he's got 2 attackers on that knight now. Mamedov, though, has a nice resource here. Queen check. And it's a beautiful queen sacrifice in the position. Knight comes in, delivers the fork, takes the queen. Now, the kicker of this position is you can't even take the knight now. So if the king comes in and takes the knight, we just promote, and it's going to be checkmate relatively shortly after that promotion. So this is the night of doom for Aronian here. It's just hopping around, snagging up material, and there's nothing that can be done about it. The best move for black in this position is to try to swing this rook back into the defense. Unfortunately, it's not going to be quick enough, though. Once it gets back, white promotes, takes the material down, and we get into this position here where Aronian resigned, because we got the dark square bishop for white, protecting the only promotion square that black has any hopes of using. So it can sit here and guard this forever. We got double pawns from black, and we've got so much pressure building up on the enemy position here for the black king that these pawns are just going to run away with the game. So Aronian resigned. Now this was a huge loss for Aronian, and it was a great win for Mamedov. He played an awesome game against a line that you don't see very often. But I think that Aronian really was trying to come out with his best today, his best kind of creative line to attack Mamedov with, and thinking that he might be able to really get a win today. And Mamedov did not have an off day. He's had a couple off days before, but he played in this game like he did in his victories, and he came out with a solid win. Now Aronian will talk a little bit more about his position in the point totals at the end, but this really hurt his opportunities to win this tournament, especially when we focus on the Anand game, which we're going to do right now. All right, we're going to take a quick look at the Anand Topalov game here, another crucial game that took place on day 9. And Topalov played a really good game up until about move 31 here in this position. We're not going to go through the whole game just to cut a little bit of time off of the video here. But it's very similar to, I believe, Anand's 10th game against Topalov in the World Chess Championship of 2010. I have a playlist if you want to check that game out, because Topalov kind of made a similar mistake, getting a little too aggressive. So from this position, it's defensible for black. There's a light square bishop, obviously, is protecting the pawn here. The white pawns can't really come down into this position easily, and black's got some resources still to help defend on a queenside attack. Pawn storm. But Topalov got a little bit too aggressive in his defense. He played pawn up to h6, and unfortunately what this led to was a series of captures that definitely favored Anand, gave him a crushing advantage in the game. Let's just look at what his better alternative could have been. Bishop to e4. Now, this bishop obviously is strongly placed here. The pawn on d5 is defending it. It's always eyeing up the pawn here on h7. So it's a nice strong move. And from this position, if white tries to infiltrate on the queen side, it's okay. Black can fend it off and deal with the pressure here and get the pawns into kind of a lockdown structure here, and have a pretty good fighting chance for a draw. Unfortunately, though, after h6, this just opens things up, and look at that. Queen check, bishop's pinned. The only move really to save this is, there's the best move to save this, let's use that, is king over to f7, and now we've just got multiple threats coming in here close to the black king. And there's not really much that black's going to be able to do to stop white now on the queen side, because now it's got to babysit all of these problems over here on the king side, and that ended up being Topalov's undoing in this game, because he couldn't vacate the defense of these squares. And we just flip back a couple moves there. He tries to put the bishop here on f5, but that doesn't work out. That just drops some material there, and Anand is able to come in with a series of checks. And if you want to take some time and study this endgame, It's very, very instructive on working with queens and pawns against an enemy queen. So I definitely recommend you take some time to do so. But it didn't take terribly long after this for Anand to secure the victory and come out with a huge, huge win on day 9 of competition. This is where the game ended, by the way. So yeah, it was a monumental day in the tournament. Some big things happened. Obviously, Anand winning, but even more so, Aronian losing. So let's go over now to the points board and let's just do some stat crunching and see what we can come up with for predictions. All right, and here is our leaderboard. So we've got Anand with a commanding lead with 6 points, followed by Aronian at 5. There is 5 rounds left, but it's starting to get mission critical here for Kramnik and below on the standings for their chance at winning. Now, the reason why it's starting to get mission critical is because Anand still has to play 5 rounds. He's been super consistent. So let's look at a worst case scenario for Anand that's realistic. Let's look at a 1-loss, 4 draws. That'll give him 2 points. So he'll be at 8 points. So Aronian, even at Aronian at 5, would have to make up 4 points or sorry, 3 points in the remaining rounds. So he's got to obviously win and have some draws and not lose probably. Let's see, if, ideal situation for him would be 1 win, no losses, and the rest draws, which would put him at 3 points. So we would have a tie. Those are realistic situations that could happen. I don't think we're gonna see Anand collapse here and lose a couple games in a row, or not come out with some draws. You know what I mean? And he might even come out with a couple more wins. You remember back a few videos I said that it's like he's pouncing now, right? He's bringing it on to these guys in the last half. He was the most consistent in the first half of the tournament, and now he's really ramping it up. So the chances of like Vladimir Kramnik or Karyakin or Mamedov or Svidler, or even Andrakin as well as he's been doing, it's just not looking good for them at this point. So really, I think we are down to a 2-horse race here. It will probably be decided in the next couple rounds. Now, if we get to a point where there's no doubt who the winner is going to be, that's where this series is going to end. I'm not going to make videos when we already know who's going to be the winner, unless something dramatically drastic happens that totally messes everything up, right? So I'm actually really curious to see what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow might be the last video in the series. We'll have to see, because if Anand comes out with a win and Aronian loses again, then yeah, that's not going to be good. So anyway, that's where we stand right now. There's still a chance, and you never know. Something might happen that no one expects. Someone from the middle grouping there, Kramnik, Karyakin, Mamedov, Svidler, they might just go on a rampage and win 2, 3, 4 games. Who knows? You never know, right? But we do have to be a little realistic here and understand that these guys are the best chess players out there, and the likelihood of them at least achieving draws instead of losing is high. Like, I mean, their chances of drawing a game are higher than actually flat out losing a game. So we'll have to see what happens, though. I think that Kramnik, he made a big mistake in round 9. I think he'll be coming back strong on round 10. Karyakin, the guy's been super impressive, and same with Mamedov. They both had some rocky games, but they've also had their moments of brilliance as well. So that's where we stand. Post in the comments what you think is going to happen. Sorry that the video is out a day later than normal. I had some audio problems. If you go back and watch my previous video, you'll hear some crackling. That isn't your speakers. My headset was starting to go, so I had to replace it. So take care. Thanks for watching the video, and we will see you for round 10.